You're listening to the BBM Global Network with 25 years in broadcast audio and video production. Our passionate team creates content and marketing for the world of Internet Talk Radio. If you've got a passion, come join us at bbmglobalnetwork.com. The BBM Global Network. Your voice is now heard.
Welcome to Happiness Ninja Down Under with your host, Jamie Rose. Jamie will educate and empower people, organizations, and communities to help us all make better health and well-being choices. She will also engage you with expert influencers from around the world. So now, please welcome the host of Happiness Ninja Down Under, Jamie Rose.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Happiness Ninja Down Under. I'm Jamie Rose, your host for the series, and you're listening to Bold Brave TV Network. It's been another crazy week here in New York, and it's a Friday evening where I am, but I have another Australian guest with me today, so it's early Saturday morning for him. Thank you, the amazing Tony Coach Curl, for joining me. He is an very accomplished businessman. He's an author, he's a global coach, he's worked with some pretty high-level thought leaders around the world, and he actually hosts his own podcast, which is in the top 10% of podcasts globally. So I'd like to welcome Tony Coach Curl. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Jamie. It's really cool to be here, and it's a beautiful start to the weekend here in Brisbane, in Australia. So, fantastic looking day, and can't wait for the interview. Can't wait. It's good to catch up. I haven't seen you for so long.
I know. I was actually just thinking before, like, okay, so we met in it was 2014 or 2015. I can't remember exactly when. We were both trainees for. Yeah. Australian Retail Association, I think it was.
Yeah, one of the major retail associations here, and that was our first meeting. And yeah, somehow along the line we connected and continued to maintain it. And I think a lot of that was about approach and attitude to life. You know, we didn't have the world's best experience with that particular association. And I think that, you know, it's like everything. When you see someone that's got a similar mindset, that's a positive mindset, you tend to be attracted to them, and you tend to connect with them. So I think that's where our connection ultimately came from. So.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because we've both been on the path of business development, personal development. Like that's our life, really. So it made sense to me that we connected.
Absolutely.
I really love just random chance meetings like that, because we actually have only met a few times in person, but you know, that's the beauty of the internet and social media. We can just maintain that connection, even though we haven't physically seen each other for I don't even know how long.
Yeah, and one of the things that really should inspire people about yourself, Jamie, is the journey that you've been on, and you know, you've now found yourself in the States in a brand new country for what you'd be there now 2 years. This is definitely
nearly
2 years. So to take yourself out of what you were doing here in Australia and just say, hey, I'm going to go for a new life experience. I think that's an amazing lesson that people can really take something away from. How many people are brave enough, courageous enough to actually go out there and do that, and to combine going to a new country, studying, and then somehow juggling everything that you do with all the balls up in the air at the same time is just a really good story. So I hope that people do get inspired by your story, because sometimes when you get, you know, the age that I get, you sort of have probably more to lose than than you're prepared to risk. Whereas people who are much younger and like yourself have got the opportunity to go out and take a risk and take a punt, go out and obtain everything that life can offer for them. So yeah, you've got a great story.
Thank you. It definitely hasn't been easy. Not many people actually really know the extent of the challenges that I've got going on here at the moment. But I'm going to write a book one day and it will air everything. But thank you. I appreciate it because it definitely hasn't been easy. And it wasn't an easy choice for me either. So I came over here when I was 34, which, it's still young and I don't have a family. So, of course, that made it a lot easier. But it still wasn't. It was a difficult choice to go back to school with a bunch of 20-year-olds in a different country on limited funding, knowing that I was going to face challenges with visas and all of those, attaining work that was aligned in the visa. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
I can only imagine, but it's an exciting one at the same time, and absolutely exciting for someone like myself to follow, because to make it in the States as you're doing is a really good story. So
thank you. I appreciate that because not everyone's cheering for me. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But in saying that, you have an amazing story as well. Would you like to share just a little bit on how you what led you down the path that you're on currently? I have more specific things that I want to get into, but I am mindful that we will have to cut for a break, and I don't want to interrupt you partway through a story.
Well, fundamentally, my story was I was a retail operations manager, leader, in fairly senior roles. So the biggest role that I had was looking after 23 retail sites. I had a team of over 300, and we were turning over $330 million in top line revenue. So that was my role. But during the course of my career, I really got more excited about developing others and seeing them succeed and seeing the lights go on. And I knew that operational leadership was fundamentally what I would call almost a young person's game. You can operate efficiently and effectively as a leader, but ultimately there's always people bubbling up that are going to challenge you. So I knew that there was going to come a time where I had to make a change. I didn't want to be that retired guy sitting in the office, and semi-retired and just no one's willing to talk to me, so I didn't want to be that person. So I started developing myself. I got certified by John Maxwell. I connected with Dr. Steve Maraboli in New York, and from there I picked up some certifications and I built some confidence around my coaching and facilitation skills. And I guess that's been my path ever since. So I left full-time. The security of that salary, Jamie, that holds so many people back. But I left that in 2013, and I've been somehow making a living ever since then. So, that's something that I'm pretty proud of too. I haven't had to go back into the workforce, and I work with leaders all around the world. I've got a podcast that just allows me to grow every time I speak to another global expert. I've written a book, which I never thought I'd do, and there's another one in the pipeline. So all of these things that I never thought that I would be able to do, and I certainly wouldn't have been doing them, and I certainly wouldn't be doing them if I was still in retail.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your journey, the fact that you didn't let fear hold you back either. Fear is a thing that can grip us so hard, but if we understand how to push through it, like you said, that security of the salary, it does hold so many people back, because I think the society that we're raised in, it doesn't really empower people. It more scares them into thinking that they need that security. Otherwise, they're going to face a whole bunch of things that they can't deal with. But it isn't. I mean, when you have a plan and a strategy, it makes it so much easier to start living a life that you want to live, not just the life that you felt that fell into your lap or that you think you're supposed to have.
Absolutely.
And so I want to get into the John C. Maxwell training that you did. I know you've developed your own thing from that. We'll get into that when we come back from the break. So we'll just cut to that and we'll be back in a moment.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I'm Jamie Rose, and you are on Old Brave TV network. I have an amazing man here with me, Tony Curl, aka Tony Coach Curl. Thank you, Tony, for joining me.
It's my pleasure, Jane. Absolutely.
So before the break, we started to touch on you've done some training with some amazing people, including John C. Maxwell. Yep. And I know that that's led to, it's not only like fueled your passion for developing leaders, but it's also led to you developing your own systems and coaching programs. Did you want to share a bit with the audience about that?
Absolutely. Well, my first contact with John Maxwell was I picked up his book Leadership Gold in one of those bargain basement bins at a bookstore, and it was like $2 or something.
I love it.
And I'd heard about him, and I hadn't really dived into him, but ultimately that was my very first aspect. And what I loved about John and that particular book is the way that he phrased things like you don't send your ducks to Eagle School. So it was really resonated with me. So that challenged me to go in and learn more about leadership and especially John's values-based leadership. And ultimately that really started to influence me in ways that I led my team. And I really started to share that, and I started to see people taking on board some of those things. So when the opportunity came to become one of the early members of the John Maxwell coaching team around the world, I jumped at it. And John's team started in 2011, and I initially joined in 2012. So I wasn't far off that founding group, but I was still, an early adapter. And I got certified in 2013. And seriously, when you were talking about fear before, I remember walking in for breakfast on the very first day of the conference, at the leadership conference, and there's 600 coaches there that I don't know. So, and all of a sudden I'm sitting down at breakfast with people that I don't know. So, your overwhelming thing is to walk out and get back into your comfort zone. But that was the first part of the challenge. And I guess along the journey from that, like we use John's stuff, and John's always sat with the concept of take my content, make it better. Go out and bring it to life in the world, and that's the overriding principle, I guess, of the John Maxwell coaching team. And so along the way, I've been sharing John's content. I've been using that to work with executives and leadership groups and, first time and frontline leaders. And along the way, and coupled with my own experience, I've started to I've developed my own, what I would call my own leadership model. And that's what I call the anatomy of a leader. And the anatomy of a leader is really the three core areas that a leader needs to have and needs to be aligned to help them become really, really effective. And, at the end of the day, we want effective and better leaders in the world. And I know the anatomy of a leader will resonate with so many leaders out there as they take steps into better leadership.
Mm. And you're going to turn that into a book as well. We were just discussing before over the break.
Yeah, that's my next book, and that's where I'm currently got some work done. I'm about 30% of the way through. It's also part of like coaching programs that I'll take a leadership group through. So when I talk about the anatomy of a leader, I mean, there are a number of different models out there already called the anatomy of a leader, and some of them are really incredibly detailed, whereas mine just incorporates three core parts that are in alignment. You've got a strong core, a service heart, and a transformative mind. And you need them to be in alignment. You need them to work within your leadership scope and your leadership skills, and that's the way you become a better leader. And the funny story about how it all started, Jamie, was I had a pain in the neck, and I can also talk about some of the leaders that I work with that were pains in the neck. But this was a physical.
This is a physical one.
Pain in the neck, and I went to see a remedial massageist. And I was expecting Rob to start working on my neck because that was where my pain was. But he started working on hips and the back and, the core. And I was asking him, I said, what are you doing? It's my neck that hurts. He said, everything from your body starts with the core. And he related it from an exercise physiology basis. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's the same with leadership. It all starts with our core. It starts with how strong our core is. It starts with the strength of the core determines how effective you're going to be in so many ways. And so that was sort of the igniting spark into where can I take this and what else aligns with having that strong core. And I guess that was the start of the program. That was the start of the concept. I had some really bad leaders as I worked through my corporate career. I also had some really great ones, to be fair. But it's the bad ones that stand out in your mind because they're potentially the ones you learn most from. And ultimately I left the corporate world because the last leader I had was just the worst one that I ever had. And this is where corporates get it wrong. So this particular person had a real divide and conquer mentality. He would compete other people against himself. He was always bagging the leaders above him in front of us. So his role was to align us with the vision and the purpose of the organization. And here he was bagging the people up ahead of him and then telling us that he should have their jobs and then was wondering why he wasn't getting the best performance. So it was just a plethora. It was just a plethora of ugliness. And, ultimately what that leader has done since I left that organization was he took a redundancy, got marched out of the next company he was on, which sort of indicates there was something funny going on. And then he's back with the company that he took the redundancy from, which I might add is a failing organization here in Australia. So they keep bringing him back. And it's part of that boys club, I guess. And that's something that we've just got to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that is uncommon to hear. I've experienced it a lot in my life. I'm not sure if it's, I always thought that I had experienced it a lot because I was a young female and I had a lot of drive. But I mean, hearing you've experienced the same thing maybe it isn't just isolated to that. But yeah, it is sad, and that is exactly why you are passionate about what you're doing. And when we come back from the break, I'd like to get stuck into discussing those 3 principles, starting with the strong core. So we'll cut to the break, and then when we come back, if it's okay with you, we'll get right into that.
Awesome.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under, guys. I am Jamie Rose, and we are on Bold Brave Media, coming to you live. I'm in New York, and my guest is in Brisbane, Australia. Thank you, Tony. We were just discussing your anatomy of a leader model that you've developed from some pretty great training that you've experienced yourself, and then you took it that next step further and developed it more. And we were just touching on the first core principle, a strong core. So if you would like to explain to the audience why that is important, what that fundamentally means, and how people can stay true to their own character through a strong core.
Absolutely. And just like our bodies are really centered around that strong core, this is where leadership is really foundationally based for any sort of a leader. So the 3 areas within your strong core that you really need to focus on as a leader is character, credibility, and calling. So the character, credibility, and calling. So each of those work with each other, but character is your foundational set. So this is built from your values, this is built from your beliefs, this is built from your integrity that you have in life. And fundamentally, Jamie, everyone needs that strong character to build themselves as a leader. You need to know what you stand for. You need to know that people need to know that your word is absolute, that it's true, that you don't have hidden agendas. And this is where the character plots really start to take hold for a leader. Because fundamentally, the people that report to you will see your character first, and they will dissect your character more than anybody else will. They'll know if you're lying, they'll know if you're cheating, they'll know if you're dodgy, they'll know if you're full of it. The old BS meter comes up really, really quickly, as you know. So if you haven't based yourself or centered yourself on having that strong character within your core, you are really going to struggle to be a leader. It's that whole concept of walking the talk, Jamie. I mean, how many times do you see leaders where their actions do not align with their words. They're telling people to be this, and then ultimately they're doing something else. And that really transcends leadership, because, as you know, a leader is always on show. So character is incredibly important. And where a person starts with that is to really understand who they are and who their values are, what their belief system is, and then really intentionally work on that on a day-to-day basis.
I couldn't agree more. I've actually run workshops myself on values. And what I found from doing that is a lot of people are not really that in line with their values, or they're making decisions where based on what they think their values are, but they're not really that strong, and they don't really understand the core foundation of values. Yeah. And so they become very wishy-washy, they make poor decisions. But so I 100% agree, and it's something that's very, it's not really talked about like in detail. We all just, blasé surface level, oh yeah, my values, this and that. But really, do we understand what each of those values is and how that transpires in your behavior on a minute by minute and day by day basis?
Absolutely. It's about finding what's non-negotiable in many, many ways. And so many people don't understand within themselves what their non-negotiables are. And the interesting thing when you work with organizations, as you would have found out, is that often when you do a values workshop, is that they're looking at that aspirational values concept. We want to create these values that people aspire to. But they do it in like a public sense that they're already doing it. When in reality, you can walk into an organization, you can meet a leader, and you can pretty much pick up what their values are very, very clearly. Now, a company's not going to sit back and allow leaders to say, well, my values are flying under the radar and not making mistakes and not taking risks and all of this. But when a leader is true to themselves, they actually acknowledge that my current level of values is not where they need to be. And that's when they can really, truly make some impact. And, John Maxwell talks about doing values as a process of starting with like 64 odd values and then working your way through. And, most people will end with about 5 values. But John takes them to 3, and then he'll take them to 1. So you're starting with 64 values and you're ending up with 1. And you really then understand what should be absolutely non-negotiable in your life. And I think that's the core. People have to ask themselves about who am I and what do I stand for? Because as we know, most people don't necessarily have that deep understanding of what it is that they stand for.
Yeah, I really like the fact that he gets it down to 1. The process that I used was, so I would get people to write their top 10 values on a piece of paper and then order them from most important to least important. And that process was actually extremely difficult because you have to put one above the other. And if all your values are, intrinsically aligned, you kind of think of them as equally important. But if you're forced to put, one as slightly more important than the other, it makes you really dissect it on such a more deeper level. Yeah,
very much so. And any sort of values workshop really needs to, I hate using the word force, but you're right. You need to force people to reflect on what is the most important values, because, people can come up with a value statement in 5 minutes, but not really mean it. And ultimately, when you spend time really dissecting that and digging deep within yourself, you truly get to understand your values or the values that you need to aspire to. And that's really, really important. So,
do you have any advice for people on how they can stay true to their values in the face of like hardship, or if they're wavering or they're not clear?
Well, I think it comes back to another one of John's leadership laws, is the law of legacy, and really understanding what it is that you want to be remembered for. John, so really trying to get that picture of who you are as a leader and identifying that and living that on a day-to-day basis. That is the best advice that I can give to anyone wanting to determine who they are going to be as a leader.
Okay, we have to cut to the break in a moment, but when we come back, we'll continue on with the anatomy of leader, the model that you've developed.
The opiate epidemic has reached crisis levels, and with so many families affected by addiction, opiate-related drug overdoses, and death, the time is now to have a real constructive conversation about addiction that could lead to better prevention, treatment, and recovery. Alan Charles, author and keynote speaker on drug abuse and prevention, presents The Alan Charles Show. Alan brings a message of hope, sharing his unbelievable story of surviving a 24-year addiction to cocaine and highlights from his memoir, Walking Out the Other Side, an addict's journey from loneliness to life. His raw honesty and courageous heart breaks the stigma of addiction and offers a unique perspective into the mind of an addict. Join Alan each week as he brings his listeners to a true understanding of the grip of addiction. It is only with this understanding that we can begin to heal. The Alan Charles Show, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network. Have you ever felt like no one is listening, or you're not getting the honest attention you deserve? Do you even know the kind of attention you want or need? You are not alone. Alice Aspen March is here to help. Thanks to Alice, through her epiphany and research over the word attention, there are solutions to the attention dilemma. Worldwide audiences have been enthralled and engaged for over 40 years with her visionary and pioneering observations. The kind of attention we get and give is vital to improving our lives and society. Alice and her weekly guests review game-changing insights for transforming and improving our understanding of attention, providing techniques for creating healthier and empowering behavior. Get a new perspective on a mainstream word. Tune into Why Our Attention Matters for fresh and thought-provoking conversations every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on boldbravemedia.com and the TuneIn Radio app.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I'm your host, Jamie Rose, and we are on Bold Brave TV. Before the break, we have been talking with Tony Curl about anatomy of leaders. So he's developed a model that encompasses 3 core principles, and we were just wrapping up talking about a strong core as the first principle. And then next, Tony would like to discuss a service heart. Tony, could you tell us what a service heart is and what that's all about?
Yeah, so we move from the strong core into the service heart, and this is where a leader really, one of the primary responsibilities for a leader is to ensure that they're looking after and serving their team. So ensuring that their team has the resources, the capabilities to do what it is that they need to be doing. There's some really great literature around the concept of being a servant leader. You know, Maxwell's got a book and Kenneth Blanchard's got a book, and there's another couple of books out there. But the key to me is that this is about your team and your staff, and this is where you start to develop them. I've got a saying that you develop the team you want from the team you have. So too many people say, I don't have the right staff, I don't have this, I don't have that, I need that person. When fundamentally, if that leader invested in the development of their team, they would be closer to the team that they actually want. And that's what service is all about. And this is what some people may term the soft skills, but the reality is that these are really difficult. Things like setting up your development, being a coach to your team, and not just being a command and control sort of style leader. So this is about a leader ensuring that their staff, their team is about are the best that they can be, and it's about our role as a leader in that. So it's how you serve your team, it's how you serve your organization, it's how you bring value to the organization through the development and the structure around your team. But Jamie, where it's really difficult is that this is the place where ego, the self-ego from a leader, is just not welcome, because you know, I've seen once again, and I'm sure you have, where leaders make decisions that benefit themselves, you know, whether it's a rostering issue, whether it's a resources issue, whether it's a budgeting issue, they make decisions that suit themselves. They'll give themselves the corner office. They'll give the car park next to the front door. That they look after the title. One of the businesses I worked with recently had a person that they brought into the organization. And they said, you name your title. And the person called himself the Chief Projects Officer. What? He was an estimator. So this is where status, ego, all of this stuff collides that makes it really difficult for the team, because at the end of the day, the status, the title, the ego is more important for the leader than their team. And this is where the service heart really kicks in. You've got to be there for your team, and that's got to be one of your first and primary aspects. So when we talk about the service heart, we talk about service, we talk about support, and we talk about structure. And structures, once again, people say, why have you got structure in there, Tony? That doesn't sound like it's one of the soft skills. You actually need structure to ensure that you're consistent in your development of your people. And otherwise it becomes ad hoc, we miss it, it becomes a nice to do instead of a must do. So I think structure is absolutely important. And it's just like the structure of a heart. We've got the left and right atrium, and they both have their same jobs, but they work in conjunction with each other, with alignment with each other. So you need structure.
So when you talk about structure in this terminology and situation, what do you do to create structure?
So
and what do you see as lacking?
Yeah, so this is where a leader's got to be really focused on the development of their team. And once again, if it's ad hoc, if it's missed, I mean, performance appraisals happen once a year. You know, some leaders, it's a tick and flick.
Yeah, exactly.
For others, they're poorly organized there. And it's just another piece of the compliance puzzle. Being structured in developing your people, things like huddles, check-ins, structured coaching sessions, development happening on a monthly basis, whether it's a 15-minute conversation over a coffee around the goals of the person. It is really about setting that structure in place. And too often we just leave it to chance. We assume that they know what they should be doing. A leader's got to be better than that. A leader's got to be saying, on the first Monday of every month, we're going to catch up for coffee at 11:15. We're going to talk about your development goals as to where you're going. It brings accountability to the team member, which is really, really important. If a team member knows that their leader cares enough, that they're scheduling time in their diary on a regular basis, you've got a greater chance of that team member stepping up than what you do if you're just going to hit them every now and again.
Exactly, and also I'd like to mention the consistency of that as well, because I know from my experience, even if I have had like a fairly effective leader or manager, they can still drop the ball and don't realize how it affects you as a staff member if they don't prioritize the catch up with you that is part of the supposed structure. Because then you don't feel that you're valued. You feel like you're constantly being put, as a secondary thing, and something else has taken priority and it's been shifted and moved. And then if that happens too often, that is going to affect the whole structure of what's been put in place negatively as well.
Yeah. And how often do leaders not give feedback to their team, Jamie, or have the tough conversations that they should be having? Now, tough conversations falls into the service heart, and some people might be saying, how does that work? You're having a really tough conversation. You're actually serving the person by having that conversation, by providing feedback. And, once again, I talk about the courage of leaders to coach courage in their team. So if I'm a leader, I want to get feedback from my team as to how I'm going. And I don't want it just to be lip service. I don't want them just say, oh, you're great, don't change anything, and then they're whinging around the water cooler. I want to hear if I'm not hitting the mark in any way, or if there are things that I can be doing better, I want to hear it, and I want to hear it from my team. And that's challenging, once again, for a leader.
Yeah, and I think that communication, especially those hard conversations, it brings up deep-seated feelings and emotions that people aren't exactly encouraged to talk about. And then that helps fuel the division and the awkwardness of these said difficult conversations. But if everybody just took their ego out of it, addressed the situation as it needed to be without hidden agendas, fakeness, emotion, then everything would flow a lot easier, and we wouldn't have this flow-on effect of negativity that then, you know, can often spiral way into places it doesn't even need to.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. We all know this on a surface level, but then in practice it becomes quite challenging. We do have to cut to a break, but when we come back, we will finish off the last portion of this fantastic model that you've developed. So we'll be back in one moment.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network. Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I am Jamie Rose, the host of this series, and you are on the Bold Brave Media Network, coming to you live. I have Tony Curl here with me. He is a coach, an author, an all-round amazing person in general, among many, many other things. And he is going to lead us into a discussion, which is the last principle of his Anatomy of a Leader. My apologies. It's the last part is transformative mind.
Yeah.
Tony, could you go into that?
Absolutely. And I guess this is where the rubber hits the ground. So in any sort of leadership model, you need to be looking at strategy and results. And so with the transformative mind, we look at the discipline, the drive, and the desire. So you need to have desire to hit the results. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to create the discipline. And ultimately, you're driving towards what the company or the outcomes that you're looking for. So this is where the transformative mind. Now, funnily enough, Jamie, as you've done a lot of work in understanding our mind and the way that it works, and I've done some work, not to the level that you've done, but I certainly understand that. Fundamentally, when you're looking at at what drives us, the vast majority of what drives us, it comes through how we think and what our thought processes are. So when you see that alignment back, and you've got the alignment with our brain, with our core, with our service, and so the mind really does drive a lot of what we're talking about with the anatomy of a leader. But this is where, once again, John Maxwell talks about your daily agenda, and leadership develops in a day, daily and not in a day. So many people go to a leadership workshop and think that they're learning how to be a leader. but it's the daily disciplines, the daily practices. But it's almost like that. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you have desire or do you have discipline? And the way I like to look at that, for example, is that they walk hand in hand. So you need both. So if you have desire but no discipline, you're sitting on a wish and you're not doing much to attain what it is that you want to get. But if you've got discipline without the desire, you're just, once again, you're just doing things for the sake of doing things. You're being disciplined for that. So they actually walk hand in hand. But this is where results for the organisation and for you as a leader really kick in, the transformative mind.
Do you think that this is the hardest part of the model that you've developed?
Yeah, so many people, and once again, you would have seen this in your experiences. People get promoted into positions because of their technical ability. They're a good salesperson. They're good at what it is that they do, whatever that is. And then all of a sudden they're promoted into, frontline leadership roles or first-time leaders, or suddenly they're looking after other people. Now, their technical skills don't help them in that aspect. They may have been a great salesperson, but their leadership skills don't allow them to share or mentor or coach others to be great salespeople. So it is difficult. So many people say to me, is leadership difficult? And I say, well, yeah, it is if you let it be. But if you've got intention and if you're conscious around what it is that you want to achieve or that you need to achieve as a leader, it becomes more effective. So I would say it's difficult if you don't have intention around what it is that you want to change. But yeah, doing the right thing on a day-to-day basis is difficult for a lot of people, I'd imagine, Jamie. So it can be really hard for some.
You actually touched on a really good point when you were talking about people being promoted that for pretty much the wrong reasons, the way that I see it. Later down in the series, I'm bringing on a strength profile expert. I've trained as a strength profile coach myself, and I'm bringing on, she's the current manager of this organization that's developed strength profile. And the reason why I'm so passionate about that is for exactly the reason what you touched on.
Yeah.
People get into these roles and nobody's actually assessed their strengths and weaknesses associated to the new role rather than the old role. And then they wonder why people turn to ego, because most people are, if people have been promoted to a role, they're then concerned if they appear like they don't know what they're doing, then they're going to lose the extra money, they're going to lose face, they're going to embarrass themselves. So then they become more focused on pretending that they can do the role that they clearly can't do. Yeah. And then the whole thing basically falls to shit, excuse my language, but that's me being blunt.
It becomes a little bit of that bluff and bluster sort of process. And once again, we see just far too many leaders. The interesting thing about leadership, especially in that particular scenario where, a good salesperson suddenly becomes the sales manager, ultimately you've got to be really prepared to move from something that you're really good at to something that you're not really good at. And for so many people, that's a challenge in itself. I'm good at this. I'm good at being a salesperson. I'm great that I'm being rewarded and recognized for my sales ability by becoming the sales manager. But does my ego stop me from looking bad in that particular role? Because ultimately you're going from being an expert to a novice. And, there's not too many people willingly putting up their hands and saying, I'm happy to go back a couple of steps and be seen as the novice again and start all over again. But in many ways, that's what you fundamentally do when you move into a leadership position, because your expertise at being good at what it is that you do is no longer the linchpin behind your success. Your linchpin behind the success is going to be how you develop and create an effective team that's going to drive those results. And if you're not good at that, you're going to be looking up and putting facades and bluffing your way through. And what's the old saying? Fake it till you make it. That's what people are going to go to make themselves look better than what maybe they really are as a leader.
And then if the leader of a team is doing that, how can they expect for the rest of the team to not follow suit and follow in their leadership example?
Yeah.
They're just going to do exactly the same thing, and then the team is going to be completely ineffective.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've just
Mm.
nailed it. The team see it first.
Exactly. And they're not necessarily going to tell the leader what they're thinking either. They're just going to bitch behind the leader's back.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah. Very interesting. All right. Well, we have to cut to the one more break, and then we will come back and we'll wrap up the segment. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, and we'll be back in a moment.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I'm your host, Jamie Rose, and we are on Bold Brave Media. I have Tony Curl here with me today, and we're going to get straight stuck into, we just touched on his Anatomy of Leader program. We've gone through the 3 elements of that, the last one being a transformative mind, and that leads us into some training that Tony has undertaken, which will help provide people with some extra tips. Tony, could you tell us about the Psycho-Neuro-Actualization training that you underwent?
Yeah, I connected with Dr. Steve Maraboli in New York very early in the piece because a lot of what I was reading in relation to research around goal setting and people attaining peak performance, there was a lot of stuff that Steve's got out there that sort of resonated with me. So he's got a program called Psycho-Neuro-Actualization, and it really helps people understand the concept of how what's happening up here and the story that we're telling ourselves is what's ultimately affecting our results and our successes. So the way it works is that, basically we all have our agreement with reality. It's the story that we tell ourselves. And then ultimately what Steve works with and how we're trained is that we understand that, we dive in with people, we get a really clear understanding of the story that people are telling themselves, and then we work hand in hand with them to help them take the steps to actualize what it is that they want to do. So, it's Steve's a bit of a nerd, and he's a learned man, and he's a brilliant man, very, very smart. But the program is just so practical for people. We dive in, we don't make judgment. It's not like I'm the coach, I'm going to tell you the best way to go. This is about truly understanding the person, where they're at, and how best we can work together to get them out of whatever hole that they're in. So it
sounds like it might be related to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. self-actualization, just from the title, is there an element of that involved in it, or did that inspire his work?
You could probably align it to it, but in the case of actualization, it means the process there is about putting actions in and actually doing them, from making them reality. So, so many people can put together a plan for a goal and it looks great, but they never do it. So the actualization part is about really understanding our cognitive processes, our neuro processes, and then walking with that person to make sure that they're doing what it is that they've got to do. And that's the key to the success. It's probably one of the most successful programs that I see in helping people actually get started, so on their goals and their dreams.
And that's part of your coaching that you do as well?
Absolutely. It's probably the foundation of my coaching. So from a leadership aspect, I've got the John Maxwell stuff, and I obviously have John's content. I can share that. And then from the process, I liken it to jumping in the hole with someone to truly understand what they're doing, and then to work with them to get them out.
Okay, well, that sounds fantastic. I personally hadn't heard of that particular technique or program myself. So I'm actually going to do a little bit more research on it myself, because it sounds really interesting. I know that you said earlier that you're in the middle of writing a second book, and that will be going much more in depth into the anatomy of a leader. So when did you expect that to be finished? This year, maybe next year?
It'll probably be early 2022 at this stage. So The anatomy of a leader will be a book. So
so people can follow you. They can keep up to date with what you're doing. And if they want to reach out and then grab a copy of that book when it's released, they can find out all about anatomy of a leader in much more detail than we've had the chance to go in today. We always have the pressure of time behind us that makes this very challenging. But I wanted to thank you so much for coming today and joining me and discussing this. You've been amazing, and I hope everybody goes to coachcurl.com and checks out the many, many great things that you're doing. I've loved catching up with you. Thank you very much, Tony, and tune in next week for the rest of the series, guys. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
This has been Happiness Ninja Down Under with your host, Jamie Rose. Tune in each week and join the conversation as Jamie highlights the true power of the human mind to create a thriving world. Right here on Jamie Rose's Happiness Ninja Down Under.
You've been listening to the BBM Global Network. The ideas, views, and opinions of this broadcast are those of the participants of the program and are not necessarily the ideas, views, and opinions of the BBM Global Network Company.